Hi guys, good evening. Welcome to this live Q&A, which I plan to host often, and the goal is to do it twice a week. So once every Wednesday evening, and then Saturday morning. Okay, so it'll be 30 minutes. We'll start with 30 minutes, depending on how many questions we get and how many rule changes are there in immigration. So first of all, I'm going to pick about 10 questions and some changes that happened this week and discuss whether they're actually true or just rumors being spread. Because in immigration, it's very hard to tell these days what's truth and what's just made up stuff. So here's the first question. So somebody had an open work permit and got the PNP and applied for a closed work permit and is in process right now. Can they work on their part-time job? Because a lot of people on open work permit have multiple jobs. So in this case, the answer to this question is yes, they can work part-time for a different employer because they're on maintained status. And maintained status means the conditions that were on the previous work permit, and until this application is in process, they have this maintained status that is based on their previous work permit, so they can continue working in Canada for multiple employers as long as they're complying with the conditions of their previous work permit. For instance, on previous work permit, there might be a condition that they cannot work in healthcare. Okay, if that's the condition, they cannot work for somebody in healthcare until they get that condition removed. So the short answer is yes, they can, but the long answer is depends on what kind of job they're doing and if they're complying with the conditions of the previous work permit or not. So the next one, I submit a dummy open work permit for maintained status. When should I submit a visitor record? So yeah, an interesting question. So I don't recommend submitting a visitor record and a work permit together. The reason for this is because even if the work permit is refused, you will have 90 days to restore your status as a visitor. And I'm just going to tell you a story. So what happened was a client came to us in March of this year. Okay, their work permit was expiring, and we submitted a dummy open work permit. Okay, but they were also insisting that we do a visitor record, which I, as a representative, I said no, we shouldn't do it. And believe it or not, that work permit application is still in process, and in the parallel, the client got their PNP approved from Manitoba, and we have submitted a PR application through express entry. Now, since that person was on maintained status, there's a very high chance that their work permit will be approved, like in a bridging open work permit. Okay, so it's a call that you personally or your representative should make, but I don't recommend submitting it because if you get your visitor record approved, you become a visitor and you have to stop working, and that can close a lot of doors for you. And if you're a visitor in Canada, let's say you make up your mind to study, you cannot study again because a visitor cannot submit an inside Canada study permit extension. Okay, so a lot of complications come into play if you get a visitor record. And if you're a visitor, you can no longer submit a bridging open work permit, and you can even not submit a closed work permit due to recent policy changes. So it's a risky proposition. It was all fine during COVID, but not anymore. So I don't recommend submitting both those applications at the same time. Why was there no draw for Manitoba PNP last week? Yes, a lot of people were wondering, but Manitoba government updated on their website that they had some sort of technical glitch. Maybe they're making some changes end of the year. Who knows? But problems happen even with government websites. But they did say that there's going to be a draw this week, which is tomorrow. So keeping fingers crossed. Will there be a work permit extension policy in the year 2025 in Manitoba? So that's $1 million question. Okay, if I can predict the future, I'll be in a very different position, professionally speaking. Uh, so in 2024, there was a lot of panic in the beginning of the year because last year Mark Miller said there's not going to be any PGWP extension policy. However, there were protests in Manitoba and a lot of other provinces. But Manitoba is one province that stood up. Even in June, they petitioned the immigration minister to do something, and the minister agreed for this policy. So Manitoba did it this year. It's very highly likely that they will do it the next year as well, because if you look behind me, it's pretty cold here. Okay, uh, not a lot of people come here just to live. It's very cold for 8 months of the year. So they need workers here to run the economy. And there's not going to be a lot of international students coming into Manitoba. Even in Canada, there are not going to be that many students this coming year. So there are going to be severe labor shortages, no matter what people think right now. So mm, I want to be optimistic. I think there's going to be a policy similar to what happened this year, because it's colder than what it looks from here. And it's just the starting of December, and it will continue until May. Okay, so I think there's going to be policy, because if there is no policy, there's going to be a really severe shortage of workers in Manitoba. So this is a Nova Scotia specific question, because that's where this graduate in demand stream is. Okay, so previously, one of the requirements for this stream was that you need to have at least 32 months of a study program of study. Okay, but recently they changed it to 24 weeks. So that's about 6 months. Okay, now, somebody commented, and I think that's very interesting, because even visitors can study for 6 months. Okay. But what visitors cannot do is submit a work permit extension from within Canada because of the recent policy changes. So yes, that is true. It's not false, but I recommend you studying on that program only with a valid study permit. If you have a visitor record, or you're a visitor in Canada and thinking of studying this 24 weeks program and then doing a graduate in demand and PNP, I recommend you not to do this. But yes, there was a recent change, and even people who have done 24 weeks program are eligible for that. Okay, there's another one. Oh, this year. Okay, category based draw. So Stephen Moran, who's a immigration lawyer, very highly reputed, and he shared that the category based draws have. Uh, he shared it before the last French specific draw, that they have exhausted the quota, and it turns out they have not. But I think so. I don't think there's going to be any more draw for techies this year. There might be one category based draw for transportation sector, might be, but the score will not be 400. It's probably going to be over 450, 460. So I don't think there's going to be any French proficiency draw this year. Likely there's going to be one transportation sector draw, if at all. Sorry, that's the best answer I can give you on that. When is the next CEC draw? Why they skipped the CEC draw last week? Is there any reason? Well, they might have enough candidates in the pool, in their inventory, that they want to process next year. Okay, so we cannot hold government to their promises. As you can see, overnight, Minister Miller decided to cut down PNPs by 50%, because people were not accepting, the provinces were not accepting refugees from the federal government. Okay, now he's giving speeches in the parliament saying that provinces were crying about immigrants. I will have something to say about after I answer these questions, okay, that I picked for this Q&A. But we can't hold them to it. Hopefully there's one this week or next week. I'm sorry, we cannot predict the future, but see next year there's a lot of hope, because you can see in the revised the revised targets that they have shared, that they're going to focus on inside Canada. And it's very, very likely that the score will hover somewhere between 490 to 525. That is next year. Do not hold me to it, please. We're just having a public discussion. But they want to make sure people who are inside Canada are 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 rewarded, and hopefully the trend continues and the CRS score will go down. Okay. So this one. So this week there was this one update. There was news, not an update. I consider an update if it's an official IRCC website. There was just this news, like slight rumor that the recent change that required people to get a new study permit before they change schools or program has been suspended until January 2025. I have not seen anything on IRCC website, but it generally does seem to be true if it's leaked to the press by somebody in the immigration department. So we'll just have to wait and see. But this is good news. And also, I want to tell you something that I think they're doing a really, really bad thing by limiting PGWP eligibility to people who are just going to study in construction. Because believe it or not, people don't come to Canada for construction jobs, okay? Especially international students. There's a reason nobody has been going into construction over these years, over the past years, and there is still a persistent labor shortage, okay? Because if you look into countries like India or South America or Europe, nobody dreams about having a construction job in Canada. People want to come here because they want to work in IT and other exciting fields, right? So I don't know who's making these rules, but they're not good. Okay, they're not thinking like construction jobs are really looked down upon in countries like India. And if you are a graduate, postgraduate, and if they are not going to give you a they're not going to give you a PGWP, why would people come here? And there was recent news that the study permits have, the applications have gone down by 50%. Well, hello, what did you guys think? When you're trying to push people who are already here out of Canada, what message does that send to people who are outside Canada and thinking about applying? That you don't want people here, right? So they have gotten it completely wrong. They're focusing at the wrong people. International students are not their enemies. Okay, they're not the cause of the problem. It's them themselves. They brought in so many visitors who are looking to apply for refugees and all that, but they have somehow honed on international students. I don't think that's right, and I do think Canada will pay a very big price in terms of labor shortages in next coming 2 years. And if anything, this rule change is a sign of things to come, because colleges are having record deficits, they're laying off people, and those people are going to go on EI, right? And the government has to like pay price for these rules they're changing. So the colleges may have petitioned them like, hey, can you delay these rules until January, so people who want to start from the winter 2025 can start. So we have to wait and see what happens there. But for now, nothing is concrete. And I do think Canada is making a very big mistake by limiting the PGWP eligibility to people who do construction and who do IT and healthcare, because healthcare program, they're very hard to get into. There's a reason even PR and citizens don't go there. Okay, uh, so it's quite simple. So a lot of changes coming in, and we'll be talking about them here twice a week. I'll try my best to answer all your questions. If you have submitted any questions during this live stream, I will be responding to them by email, because we do ask you to submit your email as well. But there was one court case I wanted to talk to you about. Okay, just give me a moment. So this court case is Liu versus Canada. It came out this week, okay, and there was a the issue that was decided here was if two people live together, which is very common, what had happened is this: if a PR of Canada, she submitted an application to sponsor her husband in Canada, okay, under spousal and common law partner clause. During the assessment of the application, you have to put down your address history, okay. Based on the address history, the officer raised concerns that this person was in a common law relationship and the sponsor had not declared it on her PR application either. So, a lot of complications there, right? People live together, they claim they don't know it's a common law relationship when they apply for PR, and later on, when other person's work permit is expiring, they choose to do a spousal sponsorship, right? Very common. But in this case, the officer was like, you have not been truthful to us during your application. And there's a section of the law that disqualifies a family member if they were not examined when the primary applicant. A very technical thing. Basically, the court at the end, the court said that the decision to refuse the application was unreasonable by the officer, and it was sent back to a different officer for redetermination. Great job by a lawyer. So that's why I always say get a second opinion on your situation, because on plain reading, if you ask people online, even some lawyers or consultants, they would just say, well, you have made a giant mistake, it's misrepresentation. Especially friends would tell you that it's a misrepresentation because they heard from somewhere, right? But that's not the case. Every case is decided on their own merits, okay. So be very, very careful when you decide to give up on your application or when you take advice from people who might not know what they're talking about. And uh, there is two updates I want to share this week, which were very complicated cases that we got approved. So one was somebody had a 5-year ban, okay, because they something happened in their previous application when they were applying for a study permit to Canada. So there was a 5-year ban, but now they were married to a Canadian permanent resident. The relationship was genuine. Everything was like checked off all boxes. However, they were still within that 5-year ban. So we were able to get them PR by leveraging Section 25(1) of the IRPA that allows you to raise the humanitarian compassionate factors. That's number one. Another one is very interesting. This is related to the LMIA exempt work permit in Atlantic Immigration Program. So here's what happened. The client was refused previous work permits for making mistakes, like not submitting a proper application. C18 is one of the most challenging application. So she had two refusals. She had submitted a PR application, and that PR application also got returned. Now the client was out of status, but within the 90-day restoration window, okay, the PR application requires them to have a temporary resident status, not maintained, not within restoration. And the work permit application requires them to have a PR application in process. So it was a classic chicken or egg problem. What comes first? So without status, you cannot submit a PR application, and without PR application, you will not get a work permit approved. So what did we do? And to add another layer of complexity, if you convert into a visitor, which gives you temporary resident status, okay, to submit the PR, you can no longer apply for a work permit from inside Canada because of the recent changes that happened in August. Okay. However, my genius assistant, she came up with an incredible strategy, and we got the work permit for the client today. Okay. Like it's completely legal, lawful. IRCC was informed of all the changes, but we were able to get it done. So it was a classic chicken or egg problem, which on plain reading, you would just give up. Like, I don't have a temporary resident status, so how can I submit the PR? And if you don't have a PR application submitted, this is the only work permit that you will not get approved, because it totally makes sense. So it's a work permit for you to be bridged until you get the PR. Okay. So these two problems were solved this week. I wanted to share the update, and my assistant Paramjit Kaur, she played a very big role in both these applications. So if you call our office, she's the one who'll answer your calls. So make sure you trust her word when she said both these clients were very patient, and we got it for them. So very happy. And so for today, this is all I have, and I intend to do this regularly, twice a week. We're going to talk about new court cases that come, our take on immigration. Okay, we'll share some complicated cases here. We might even have some clients here about testimonials. Okay, I have shared a Google form that will remain open on our social media channels where you can submit your question. And the next live Q&A will be Saturday. I'm yet to decide on the time, but there'll be two live Q&As every week, Wednesday and Saturday. I will personally answer your questions. And if I'm not able to answer your questions, I will send you an email or I'll give you a call. Okay. Thank you. Have a great day.